Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 2 of The Silent Sea. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we got our cold opening, where we have, Gian was left something by her sister, but it's something that was encrypted, and she needed a password, and it turns out the password was it Mare Tranquilities, because her sister's the one that told her about the dark spots on the moon being called the Silent Sea. Because I know, I kind of looked it up beforehand. I want to say the Sea of Tranquility is the name of the short film that this is based on, because the same person who made the short film back in 2014 is the same creator behind the show. But I wonder, is that a English translation, as in it's a super accurate translation from Korean, or is that just kind of a rough estimate translation, whether it's the Silent Sea or that other the Sea of Tranquilities? But the fact is, when she typed in the password, it's Mare Tranquilities or something like that. So she found a message from her sister saying find Luna. So once again, showcasing that that's the main reason why Gian is here. She's trying to find out some secret. For one, finding out what happened to her sister, because a big detail I forgot to mention last episode was one of the crew members referenced when they were at the monument kind of representing all those that were lost. They're not actually inscribed. So you don't get to know the names of the people, because they're keeping that ambiguous, because I think context later on in this episode gives you, context that I think it's a byproduct of they're trying. It's the public, you won't have their bodies, so we don't want to make that public knowledge yet, because we want the families to be able to grieve in private before we make that. We don't ever want to make it a public thing, so I guess that's why they don't put their names anywhere. But I figured as much. Her sister had to be the reason why, because we know her sister was a part of this program, that she was part of the crew at the station, and so finding out that she was involved in this, because I think that speaks volumes, because later on, Gian asked Director Cho, around this time earlier before officially taking it, she was like, why did you ask for me specifically? Because the director knows that she had a sister, she lost a sister to everything that went down on the station, so it's why would you do that? And she's just sly and just smiling and just keeps drinking. It's she's so devious, because she has all the answers, she probably knows most. She's one of those characters of I know everything that's going on, but I'm not going to tell you, whether it's government secrets that we've been up to some shady stuff we don't want the public to know, or it's what we want you to do a mission without asking too many questions, because you won't have to worry about it. Once you bring back the sample you're supposed to bring back, you'll just move on with your lives, and that'll be it. Sacrifices will have to be made, type of thing of whatever happens, but as long as you complete your mission, which seems like that's all Captain Han's concerned about, but. Because the thing is, Director Choi made a point to be right, it's probably better for the others to not know that you're a bereaved family member. She's right, it would just kind of make things tougher. But the fact is, the way Han talked to her later on, it sounds like he definitely knows, which you can tell it caught Gian off guard, because no one on this crew is supposed to know about my circumstances, because she's the one that keeps asking questions over and over, especially when they find a body, and I was oh, that's interesting. I was because looking at the dude, I was that's definitely not a Korean dude, which I was because a question I had last episode, I was curious about whether or not this program, maybe not just the SAA in general, but even this whole station situation, was that just a Korea thing only, or is there are other countries involved? Because this guy in particular, they're with his weapon and everything, he's got to be a mercenary. They're maybe he's from the US, maybe he's from Russia, and we learn about a group known as, RX? Essentially, what was it they referred to them as? God, there was a very specific term they used to describe them. It wasn't in a favorable light. It seems like it's kind of a fringe organization that people aren't too fond of. It came off that way. I can't remember off the top of my head now how they described the organization. Oh, because they're nuts about. I think maintaining as much water as possible. They're an organization that exists to kind of make sure there stays as much water as possible. It was something like that. They hold a lot of regulation. They're an organization that push forth a lot of regulations for that type of stuff. Like I said, I'm butchering it. I know there was something very specific, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But Dr. Hong makes it pretty clear, like, wow, this guy does not look like he died from radiation. In fact, it looks like he died of drowning. You're like, wait, what? And then even later on, Suchan was like, yeah, it's weird. This place was supposed to have been, like, shut down because of a radiation leak. This area has pretty normal levels. It's like, well, could have been other areas got it pretty bad. It's like, but yeah, even if they got it bad, that radiation would have leaked over into these other areas. Like, these are pretty normal levels. They would not be this low. Even if the radiation was in a different area, it would have leaked over here. So these levels would be higher by proxy anyway. So, but Han's the one that's like, who cares? We got our one mission. And even, because they wanted to initially do an autopsy of the guy they found, because it's like, right, finding out how he died might, give them some answers, because everyone's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this place is supposed to be locked down because of radiation, but the levels seem normal. Like, what's up with that? Once again, Han's pushing forward, like, it doesn't matter, we've got our main mission. And he shuts down anytime, like, Jian is like, no, maybe we should look into it. He's like, no, I'm the one who gets to decide what we take priority in, and so he just kind of moves along. And you have even Gisu, like, make some, like, wild, outlandish, like, remark about, like, well, luckily he died drowning in water. He's busting out laughing. The others look at him like, what the fuck is wrong with you? It's like, yeah, could you not be more of a villain? But they end up finding the command area, and they start turning on the power for stuff. And it becomes a situation of like, oh, what's the air situation like in here? And obviously, because it's like, right, with everything being as it is, the radiation levels being low, they should be fine. And Jion's the first one to take off her helmet. And it's just kind of to make a point, because you could tell Han was like, don't do that. Because it's like, right, one of these other people needs to be a sacrificial lamb first. I love that Suchan was like the last one. He didn't want to take off his helmet. Han was like, all right, you can take off your equipment. And then like taps him on the head of his helmet. But I love that we get some sneaky insight to Jian, because we find out when they were showing the map to this place during that meeting where the entire crew is together, she memorized it and went back home, drew a map of the map, and kind of drew out the map and labeled places that she figures she needs to go. In fact, we find out that she actually talked to Mr. Huang beforehand. I think he knows exactly who she is and what she went through. But she asked him about Luna, and it's like, how do you know about it? She was like, oh, Director Cho brought it. It was like, no, there's no way she'd ever mention that. But essentially, Luna is a database, their storage database at the station. So, once again, Mr. Huang, he created the place, so he has to be in the ins and outs of knowing what the place is all about. But because Jian knows that if she can get to those places, she can find out more information about exactly what goes on. Because once again, she has the most questions, but Captain Han keeps shutting it down. So it's like, right, we're going to all divide up and go to the different respective storage places to try and get a sample. You even had Jian asking Shuchan, like, is there a way to track the, because everyone has, like, I guess even them, I don't know if that was supposed to be, like, a memory of, like, her getting it, so they all have a means of, I think it is, because they're all supposed to be able to track each other, but she wanted to try and see, like, right, is there a way to track anyone that's been on this, and it's like, no, we can't, because, like, it's like, yeah, but, like, it's kind of, like, there's kind of no point, because we can't even really take these people back to their families, because that was something Director, Choi, like, was kind of making a point of, is that before they shut this facility down, they plan to retrieve everybody's bodies and bring it back. And I'm like, I don't believe the altruism, but, maybe, because especially when I guess it's like you're going to have like a closed casket situation. I'm like, well, once again, people could be able to see, these people didn't die from radiation. I'm like, it seems pretty obvious. So I'm like, how would you have covered that up? That's why they'll probably be like, oh, something terrible happened and we lost all the bodies. I'm sorry we couldn't retrieve them for you. It seems like one of those type of cover-up type of things. But like I said, each group respectively goes their different directions. You had Captain Han's team. They try to open one of the doors because they're stuck. Find a whole bunch of bodies. And I'm like, well, we didn't find anyone else. So it almost seems like everyone that died was there. There was this moment, though, when Dr. Hong was like showing the bodies and Jian had a certain reaction. I was like, oh, is your sister one of those bodies? That's what I was curious about. Once again, no one else on the crew knows about her sister being one of the crew except for Captain Hong, because it seems like he kind of indicated like he did, because he's like, right, this isn't your personal curiosity. And even she was like, what does that mean? And everyone else in the crew, like, at their respective spots looking like, I don't know what he's talking about. So they went to find their, going past all the bodies and stuff, they ultimately go to find where the samples are in the first unit. That's where, like, Captain Han and Dr. Hong are, and the samples are all gone. Go to storage unit 2. That's where Suchan and the others are. They don't find any. He does find one that's got a green light, but it involves crawling over a body. And in that moment, he like hits the body, and the body like exhales, and some particles fall into his eye. And you're like, and you're infected. And he sees the thing, and he's like, oh, it's green, but it's empty. Oh well, like I guess we don't have. I don't like. It's particles. Whatever it is that killed all these people, it's something it's something you can't see with the naked eye, because notice that thing is green. It's not empty, it's just empty to the naked eye. So the same particles that infected everyone, I think, are the same ones that just ended up in Suchan's eye, and it's spreading around. But I immediately think that's what it is. I think they're just like infectious particles to a virus or something. Because once again, it seemed like this mission was unrelated, but considering the fact is, oh, these people drowned from the inside out, and looking at Suchan's situation later on, he's got water growing from his ear, like dripping from his ear. So either it's a virus or something that overproduces water in the body, because the human body is like 70% water, so not unless it exacerbates that and you start drowning your own liquid and it starts pouring out in every orifice that it can, or it just, or not, I was about to say, not unless it liquefies certain parts. I was like, not unless it liquefies your brain and turns it into water. I think it's just like maybe it makes like your cells start like overproducing water or something. Like, I don't know the ins and outs of it yet, but with that being the case, now it makes sense why the samples are probably so important, because it can help with the drought situation. I figured there had to be some connection, but the fact is the story doesn't start off with, oh, we want you to retrieve these samples, because it's like, no, we want you to retrieve these samples because that station's about to get shut down. So before that, we need you to get these samples, not letting you know this might potentially be the means necessary to save the rest of the world. Because that might be indicative of why that mercenary was here, because like someone hired them. Like, once again, how much every government is associated with this, whether this is just a Korean like operation on its own, or whether like this is an international like countries have come together for this project. But the fact is that 99% of all those capsules are empty, makes me think like whoever was here tried to destroy them all. Once things started going super haywire, they might have tried to destroy it. Like, right, anyone that comes here, we can't let them take this back to Earth because it's going to be the end-all, be-all. It kind of reminds me, an example of something that kind of made me think of recently. It reminds me, it's not the same, but it reminds me of Lost in Space, the TV show on Netflix, that there's a stuff in the water that basically eats metal in season 2 of the show. So it kind of reminds me of that, like, right, there's some kind of infectious something inside of it that spreads from metal to metal. So it seems like it's kind of, like I said, a virus of some sort that bounces from body to body. We also, like, we learned quite a bit about the drought situation on Earth, that apparently, what was it, like, Gisu made some remark, I want to say he's like, every 10 kids that are born post-drought die, because it's like, they only live for about 5 years, and it turns out, well, because Gisu knows, like, Han, because it's like, right, we go back, he was the top of the class. The fact is, he actually left, but got, like, his position and stuff like that. He left, but Director Choi like called him back in for this specifically, because it's all about raising up your water status. And he was like, oh, he did all he could for his child, which Jeong was like, I don't need to know this information. He's like, how rude. I'm like, what are you talking about, you douchebag? Like, spreading someone else's business like that behind their back? Like, yeah. But the moment was that Chief Gong went to, like, investigate, potentially, like, oh, it seems like there's someone else's signature here. But that was, like, because we knew that Gisu was up to something suspicious, because he was fiddling with something, and he put something in his pocket. It seems like that's what it was, to create a false signature. And so he tells Gianna's like, oh, you want to investigate stuff? You should go do it now. Go to the infirmary to find out what's really going on here, because that's the only way we're going to survive. Being smug, being like, haha, I'm so sly. He opens the door and goes in there. Sadly, all the vials are gone. Which I think is so interesting. They're supposed to be getting it, but it seems like you have your own separate mission, so... what exactly? Like, I don't know if he's supposed to, like, right, get a vial, find any, and then make sure that, like, he brings back a vial, but make it seem like the team didn't find any. So maybe that's the point of, like, right, find one without letting the rest of the team find one, and probably clear any data that might be left. But it seemed like there's already data issues of, like, there's stuff they can't access. Because they referenced it early on, too, that there are restricted areas that you need, like, a level 1 card or like access card or whatever or higher, and they're like, oh, interestingly enough, these very restricted areas are the same areas where they talked about the radiation being the worst at. And Sucho was like, oh, interesting coincidence. It's like, no, it's not a coincidence. That's meant to scare you away from whatever's really going on here. I kept wondering to some extent, like, what does this aesthetically remind me of? It's not a one-for-one, but I get Dead Space vibes a little bit from it. I doubt we're going to get Dead Space level monsters, but it has that, like, that feel and that atmosphere being in space. It definitely gives me, like, some, especially when he was scanning, like, that dead body and saw the weapon, you saw those pop-up menus for it and stuff. I'm like, oh, it gave me Dead Space vibes. I've seen people play the game. I've never played it myself. I'm not the biggest horror person, movie-wise or video game-wise, so... but I love that whole scene where Gisu ends up dropping his flashlight. I'm like, oh yeah, that's not going to be good. I was like, the moment he dropped this flashlight, he's going to reach under. I'm like, oh, something's going to grab you, especially because of the creepy atmosphere of like, oh cool, your flashlight's going out. I was like, that's not. Cause I was also wondering like, oh, was something tapping it on the other end? But he's like, oh, don't worry, when I get you, I'm gonna get some new batteries. He reaches and touches it, and then something yanks it from him, and he freaks out. I was like, yo. But he goes back under and he looks and sees that there is one more capsule. I'm like, I wouldn't reach my hands back under there. You know something grabbed your flashlight. Why would you do that? You big dummy. But nevertheless. So we got that. And like I said, we had the whole Shuton situation of poor guy is going to die. Like, I don't know. I don't think there's, whatever this is, there's no saving him from him. Now, the question then becomes also, how does it spread? We see with the particles on a dead body, like, it isn't just a natural, it's not just naturally in the air, because maybe it lingers in the air for a little bit, but eventually dissipates. But it doesn't seem like it's in proximity, because they were around those bodies without issues. It seems like you specifically have to get the particles. They have to land somewhere. Like it's landed on his eye, and that just connects it to the rest of your body. I don't know if it touches your skin, if it has the same aspect. It just has to be in a position where it can get inside of your body, I guess. Maybe it can get absorbed through the skin. Whatever the case may be, still a lot of questions. We're etching forward with this mystery, finding out like little tidbits here and there. Obviously, throwing out my own theories about things, but it definitely seems like we're heading in the right direction. And like I brought up before, I figure Gisu's the one that knows everything. I was curious once again, like how much Han knows. I think he knows enough, but not everything. I think Gisu is definitely the one who knows everything, because I don't even think Captain Han is aware of what Gisu's meant to be doing on this mission, that he has his own separate mission, why he was brought in last minute. But to be fair, he was also like, yeah, whatever, do it. It's like, I guess he's like, right, whatever changes they make, I'm sure it's for the mission. So either he's got that perspective, or he actually does know everything and he knows what Gisu's actually here to do. If that were the case, I feel like he would have brought Gisu with him, but I guess it's like, right, divide and conquer. So that's why I'm leaning more towards, like, I don't think he knows everything. He probably knows, like, what he believes to be everything, when in actuality he only knows maybe 70%, maybe even 80%, but he definitely doesn't know everything. So I think that's why he has that perspective of like, right, stop looking into stuff. You don't need to know what's happening here, because the less questions you ask, the less likely I'm probably going to have to pop all of you before we leave, because if you know too much before we leave, I can't take the chance you might spew that information to someone else. So he might be under the guise of like, stop asking questions, because the more you know, I'm going to have to kill you before we leave, if we leave at all, because they can't get communications up. But it's like, oh, I'm sure they'll figure out soon enough and they'll send a rescue mission. So we'll see how that all works out for them. But I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.